Novak Djokovic has done it once again. The guy's been embroiled in controversy recently, but he shut everyone up with his most recent achievement. He won the 2023 Australian Open. After a year away from the tournament, Djokovic returned in January of this year and he absolutely dominated.
Brilliant. What a way to seal it. Rublev boils over.
The man only dropped one set in total and went from being ranked 4th back to being number 1 in the world. By all accounts, this was an extremely successful start to the year. Plus, with this win at Melbourne, the Serb has won himself another Grand Slam title. That's right, he's now tied with Nadal's record of 22 Grand Slam wins. And if that wasn't enough, the Australian Open win itself was a huge record. Yeah, it was the Joker's 10th win. No one even comes close. But despite this huge win, the Serbs' victory wasn't free of controversy. And to truly understand where all of this controversy originated from, we first have to consider what went down at the 2022 tournament in Melbourne. Yeah, 2022 wasn't a good year for the champ at all. He managed to get himself banned from the Australian Open, and it was a huge deal. That's right, 2022 was the year the Serbinator entered as the world's #1 tennis player.
I think results speak enough for themselves. You know how I feel in Australia, how well I have been playing here over the last 15 years.
And it looked like he was going to continue his hot streak, but unfortunately for him, things didn't go that way. No, his questionable medical beliefs and practices landed him in hot water. And not just the Australian Open. Yep, it went way beyond just that. The entire Australian government took issue with the tennis star. The man was banned for 3 whole years, and he wasn't able to play that year's tourney in Melbourne.
You know, I understand the consequences of my decision. And one of the consequences of my decision was not going to Australia, and I was prepared not to go.
What's more, he was thrown out of the country. He was deported, and the government of Serbia also got involved. Yeah, it was a drastic punishment, and even the Aussie player Nick Kyrgios spoke out against it. But what was it that the Serb did? What were these medical beliefs and practices of his? He refused to get vaccinated. Yup, the classic.
I keep my mind open because we are all trying to find collectively a best possible solution to end COVID.
Apparently, the Joker's not a fan of traditional medicine, and before you think he's just some politically charged anti-vaxxer, think again. It goes much deeper for this guy. He despises putting anything in his body, and even a career-saving surgery on his elbow was complicated for him to come to terms with. Yeah, with convictions like these, it's no surprise he chose to go against the vaccine rules of all the big tournaments, and he paid the price, because not only did he sit out of the Aussie tournament, but he was also barred from some of the other big ones. The guy went from being number 1 to number 8, and the controversy was huge. I mean, the fans were beginning to speculate that this was the end for the 35-year-old legend. Still, despite the embarrassment of being deported from Australia and being handed a 3-year ban, the Serbs' home country and the government stayed behind him.
You know, there's always a next challenge to look up to, and I'm very pleased with the performance, so thank you very much.
And another controversy struck as 2023 approached, although this one was in the Serbinator's favor. His ban was waived, and he was issued a visa for the 2023 Australian Open. Yeah, as much as it was a controversy that this man was banned in the first place, it was still just confusing how the Australian government walked their decision back. That's right, the Immigration Minister of Australia issued the guy a visa, despite the Health Minister having made a statement explaining the Serb's ban. It was odd, and even though the controversy wasn't directly about him, it was very much centered around him. In any case, this was just the beginning of all the drama the star would endure at this tournament. There were some other big moments we just have to mention. The fact that Papa Djokovic wasn't present at the final. This might come as a huge shock to those of you unaware of what happened.
So, you know, these are the moments where you're just like, okay, now it's about locking in, it's about creating your own space.
After all, Noel's father is his biggest supporter, and there's no way he'd ever miss his son's 22nd Grand Slam win. Still, he wasn't there, and the reason was very political. Yeah, Tennis Australia banned the display of Russian flags at their events, and some Russian fans didn't take this news too well. They showed up to a game brandishing the flags, and Papa Joker made some unfortunate decisions. Once the men were evicted from the venue, the man was seen posing with them, and apparently he even said some things in support of Putin and Russia.
Novak je Srbija, a Srbija je Novak. Oni gaze Novaka, a samim ti gaze i Srbiju i srpski narod.
Now, granted, he didn't directly declare his support for Putin, but this was still a huge splash as far as drama goes. Yeah, the guy's absence at Noel's final game of the tourney probably makes a lot more sense now, right? Because ultimately, he is his son's #1 supporter, and he didn't want to cause any more trouble for the guy.
Basically asking me a question like he did it intentionally and like he's not being careful about what he's doing.
And even though this was a huge controversy for the Serbian star, unfortunately, even this wasn't the end of it. No, Djokovic suffered an injury, and it stirred up a lot of discussions. And if you know anything about this man's past, the people weren't saying anything good. The Serbinator's been accused of faking injuries to break his opponent's momentum in the past. Not just by the fans, but by players too. And the reason he got into trouble in the past was that he was able to play some insane tennis, despite apparently having suffered severe injuries. The same happened this year in Melbourne when he announced he had suffered a 3-centimeter tear in his hamstring. Yeah, that's huge. And he still played and won. Now you can imagine the controversy as accusations of cheating were thrown around. As I said, this legend of the game isn't without his flaws, but he still managed to shut all of his haters up. And he was helped in no small part by the tournament director for the major. The man completely negated all the speculation around Noel's injury.
There is a long, long way to go.
He even went as far as to state that he had personally seen the scans and that Djokovic was definitely injured. But he didn't stop there and reminded everyone of how great the Serb was. That's right, not just any player can keep up the pace with a torn hamstring. And despite all his issues, the Serb is the GOAT. Now, lots of you guys will be pointing to Federer and Nadal at this point, and they're both amazing for sure. But at least for now, it seems like the Joker has taken the definitive lead. The guy's got winning records against both Nadal and Federer. Not to mention, with his incredible win at the Aussie Open, he's tied Nadal's record for Grand Slams.
We didn't have too many players to look up to, players that have reached these heights in a professional tennis.
Come on, guys. What even is there that makes this man inferior to those other two greats? Not only does he now have the most Grand Slams in history alongside his Spanish rival, but he's beaten both the Swiss King and the King of Clay more times than they've beaten him. Don't get me wrong, though. You're allowed to dislike this guy, and he's indeed got a checkered record. But objectively, just looking at the numbers, Novak Djokovic has accomplished more than any other player in history.
I gave it all today and throughout the week in order to be able to get my hands on the trophy.
And while Nadal is still active, he's currently ranked 6th, while the Serb sits at #1. He may well make a comeback, but for now, the Serbinator's on top, and the haters have no choice but to accept that. That was a breakdown of Djokovic's recent win that silenced all the haters, and the craziest controversies he overcame to do it. See you next time.